friends, this is Jesse, and this is Finding My Wings. Now, I'm getting a little cooped up with COVID here, and I decided to maybe make a video that can help anybody considering a car like an FR-S, a BRZ, or a GT86. So I first wanted to start off with a context to review why I ended up with an FR-S. So the context for me here is 25, I was 24 when I bought the car. I'm just getting into a position where I got a new job. I was driving an older 90s car, not this one, but a different 90s car, and it just wasn't reliable anymore. I need a reliable way to get to work, but I'm also a car person, so I'm not just going to go out and buy a used Corolla, even though that could be fine with the manual, let's all be honest. So the context here is that a 1998 Mercury Mystique, Sport LS, whatever, it was an automatic, it was a hand-me-down car, it was amazing, it got me through basically from being 13 until 24. So it was a good 10-year run on that car. It didn't owe me anything. It was an awesome experience to kind of get used to owning and living with a good car. So coming out of that, I put a lot of time and effort into some weird cars, trying to find a Skyline or a Stygia or an A86, or even just an old 240Z or something that could be made reliable for the daily. I came to the conclusion that a lot of those cars weren't really for me. I didn't really have the time to do wrenching on a car that I had to rely on. So it really came down to a bunch of options on the modern market that were under that 20 grand Canadian kind of price point. American probably closer to that 12 to 15 grand price point. So I'll explain some of the options that I considered and how we got to this. So really the context of the other cars that we considered at the time were anything under that $25,000 Canadian price point that could get good fuel economy. It wasn't crazy hard to get parts for, and it got somewhat good fuel economy. And of course storage is always an option there. So a lot of my searches ended up going back down to WRXs, 370Zs, 350Zs, Civic SIs, Focus STs, Fiesta STs, that kind of a thing. Really, a lot of the searching was just done through picking a kilometer range or a mile range, and just hitting under 20,000 kilometers-ish was the goal, which is of course kind of in that newer range. But you can find some good opportunities in there with people that have owned a car and maybe are in a situation where they can't afford it anymore, or they've gone to something else, or they've gotten a car for work and that car has just lost, half of its value stepping off the lot. So FR-Ss and BRZs were coming up quite a bit at the time, and we managed to look at a couple of them, usually on dealers, and weren't really finding anything too special. Had a couple weird dealer experiences that I wasn't too impressed with. So to talk a little bit more about why this car, why this specific FR-S, so I'll outline some of the context there. So I'm somewhat lucky, and I think the overall lesson here, and I'll get back to that, is patience. So this car actually had about 1,800 kilometers on it when I got it. It was an older family that had owned it. Interesting situation, they bought it with big plans and they weren't really able to follow through on them. So the car still had some plastic wrapping on it, had just about the break-in level of kilometers that you'd expect on a car like that, and it was just beautifully maintained in climate-controlled conditions, and I got it for about half of the MSRP on one of these cars. And so that's one of those things where you can't necessarily plan to find a car in that good of a condition, but if it does come up, it's something you should really jump on. I wasn't really initially always thinking about spending that 20 to 25 grand kind of price point. I was hoping to maybe stay under $10,000, but kept hitting the point where a lot of those $10,000 cars were sketchy, or you had to do a lot of research to really understand where the car was at. And for a car that you can actually grow and live with, this was an awesome opportunity. And so that's my big advice there, is to really have your patience, to understand exactly what you want, to be able to make sure that you get a car that's as new or as used as you'd like it to be. Try to avoid things that have too many mods unless it's a project that's already gone down the path that you'd like. And sometimes it's more valuable to have some of the stuff done. Big motor work, turbos, that kind of a thing. If you don't have to do it and it's been done professionally and they can prove it, it's a really, really great opportunity to get into a car that you don't have to work for, but it isn't stock. So I just wanted to wrap up. So some of the big questions, I guess, that you might be left with is, I do live in Canada, so we do have a good amount of snow. This is a daily driver. We do have another hatchback, and of course some project cars here and there, and some old really cool stuff that I'd love to be able to show you in future videos if this YouTube thing really does go anywhere at all and there's any value for you. But being able to have a right amount of storage, being able to make sure that we're not going to be limited if we need to go on a trip, or if we have a weekend away, to be able to make sure that winter driving isn't going to be a huge problem. and really just to make sure that the parts are cheap, easily available, and easy to replace on the thing. And so I'm not going to try to replace any of those videos. There's a lot of great videos on how easy these cars to work on, how much storage you have, and being able to winter drive them. My specific points here really are that don't be afraid to have a manual car in the winter, don't be afraid to have a rear-wheel drive car in the winter, as long as you have proper tires, and of course I do replace this with proper snow tires and rims for the winter. Just learn. Be open and honest about where you are, what you're able to do, and try not to crash anything. You don't need to go fast. That's for the track, that's for experience, but just make sure that your situation really makes sense to you. For storage in these cars, of course, you put both back seats down. The whole claim to fame from Toyota and Subaru is that you can fit 4 full tires and rims in this car, and it's true. We have done it, and it does fit nicely. 2 passengers, the back seats are basically unusable unless you have 2 people in the car that are maybe 5 feet or below. I haven't really figured that one out yet, as my partner would attest to. Very hard to fit in the back of it, but it's just the 2 of us. We don't really have to worry about that, and if you had to, you really could put a car seat in here. It has all the proper connections and lots of space for a car seat, and easy to get in and out. The third point is just parts and ease of repair. Easy repair, I am blown away. After all the cars that I've worked on over the years, this is the easiest to work on in really every way. All the maintenance parts are elevated, easy to get to. The prices are all over the board. You can get super cheap, like aftermarket parts, you can get really expensive aftermarket parts, you can get OEM. Everything's going to be available for quite a long time. If we can see where the Supras have gone, if we can see where Skylines, GTR, 370Zs have gone, it's not going to be a hard car to get parts for, and you have a lot of options. You don't necessarily have to put Toyota parts back on this car. You can improve it, you can ruin it if you'd like, you can do whatever you'd like. There's really great network here. And so overall, I think the big lesson here is that the BRZ has been an awesome daily driver. I'm going to shoot another video to explain a little bit more about the review of this car. But at this point in time, I would say don't hesitate. Keep this as an option. Put it alongside your Mustangs, your BRZs, your WRXs, whatever you might be thinking about it right now. It's really an awesome car. Being able to get the 5 liters per 100 kilometers just cruising down the highway has been amazing. The price on this car being just around $20,000 Canadian for myself. Hopefully you can be that point or below. But feel free to spend a little bit more though to make sure that you're down to that kilometer range of 20,000 kilometers or less without any mods. I do really appreciate this car, and I look forward to shooting some more content. Please just let me know how you feel about this. Is there any value? Did it suck? Would you rather see anything else? If there's another video you'd recommend to follow up with, I'd be glad to. So thank you very much, and I hope everybody is out there happy and healthy.